Imagine stepping into a world where yielding your desires, embracing humility, and Lisa, mute yourself, please.
Oh, sorry.
Imagine stepping into a world where yielding your desires, embracing humility, and submitting to a higher purpose not only reshapes our relationships, but also unlocks a door to unprecedented personal freedom. In a society that often champions individualism and control, the concept of submission tends to be misunderstood and undervalued. Yet, nestled within this ancient principle lies a secret power capable of transforming lives, relationships, and the very essence of our being. Today, we embark on a journey to unravel the profound beauty and strength found in the art of submission. We'll challenge prevailing misconceptions, explore the depths of spiritual surrender, and discover how yielding can lead to a richer, more fulfilling life. From the paradox of freedom in submission to the transformative impact on personal and interpersonal dynamics, we invite you on a voyage of discovery. With each question we pose, we peel back another layer of this timeless wisdom, inviting you to reflect, question, and maybe even redefine your understanding of power, freedom, and love. Whether you're seeking a deeper connection with others, longing for a more purpose driven life, or simply curious about the counterintuitive power of submission, this conversation promises insights and revelations that might just change the way you view yourself and the world around you. So, whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or somewhere in between, we welcome you to this space of exploration. Let's dive into the heart of submission, uncovering its potential to liberate, empower, and transform. Stay with us as we navigate these waters together, and you might just find the key to unlocking a level of freedom and fulfillment you never thought possible. So, that said, Lisa, I kind of want to just start off with a question, just a vague question, run of the mill. And that being said, I want to invite everybody in the chat to answer the questions that we pose as well. Now, I don't have Ravonda this morning, so I'm doing everything solo. See, I got to bear with me, okay? Um, the question that I have is, as it pertains to the concept of submission. I gotta do my Richard Nixon fingers. And the concept of the concept of submission, what seems to be the concern in this particular modern society? Like, what's the issue with submission? Why do we have such a hard time with the notion of submission? What are the struggles that you've seen? And we both have adult children, right? So, we may have heard some of the things that they said also. So, what are some of the struggles that you've seen with just adopting this idea of submission?
Um, I think the first thing, I think the word submission, people would see it as a bad word. That's the first thing. And I think that's because of, I know you teach about from ignorance to wisdom, right? Did I get that right? Ignorance to phases. And so it's not that we're saying that that's a bad word either, because some people will say, well, you're saying I'm ignorant, it's just that we don't know, and we don't have a complete understanding of what the word means. Because it a lot of people think that it means that I'm submitting to someone else, and then the people who may have the authority may abuse it. And I mean, there's an element of that as well. And so, because um, the experience and the lack of understanding of the word submission has been misunderstood, there are a lot of people who don't want to adhere to it. And I can tell you, from most of the time, I can hear it from my gender. You know, I'm not submitting, to a man. Now, if we're talking about reframing the mindset and the thoughts of relationships, then we have to be mindful that you're not submitting to man, you're submitting to God. And so I hope that made sense.
It does. It does. And I'm agreeing with you. Um, I think there is a struggle in the notion of submission, in the notion of somewhat borderline slavery, like subservient concepts. And I think a lot of times what we believe wholeheartedly is that for me to submit to a person kind of puts me in a subservient role. And I think it's a big difference when we look at it. There's a big difference between submitting and being subservient. Um, Service is things. service is the thing that we're supposed to establish.
It's not clear for some reason. I'm
Can,
not hearing you clearly. It sounds like it's a little muffled.
can you guys hear me? I need you guys to tell me in the chat. Can you guys hear me?
Now it's better. Yeah.
Okay. So I think, like I said, service is a thing. Serving others is a thing, but I think we kind of, in some notions, we confuse it because. Thank you. I think in some notions we confuse like serving others, submission, esteeming others higher than herself. We confuse that. In some notions, we get it right. We understand it wholeheartedly. But in some arenas, it's like conditional. I'm not going to do this until I see. I'm not going to do this unless, right? Which is totally outside of the realm of what submission is all about. I also will say that, and I like the fact that you brought in past experiences because what we do, because we never do the necessarily work, we don't necessarily do the work on ourselves that we're supposed to do. And so what we do is we bring the feelings from our past into the present and we allow those feelings to dictate our behavior. So if I've been through, let's just say, a bad relationship because I yielded in my first marriage and it didn't work well for me. Therefore, now my mindset moving forward is that I am not going to yield unless I understand that this person is this person. This person believes in this. I see this person do this. I observe how this person treats their mom and all kind of stuff like that. So the unharmonized emotions from past experiences lead us into a space of fear as it pertains to what we do in our current situation, the here and now. And unfortunately, we have tainted the notion of relationship when it comes down to submission, right? And because we have tainted it, because we've tainted that notion, we have now tainted the relationship before the relationship has gotten started. And so we'll get more so into that as we drive forward. Looking at some of the information in the chat. I'm sorry, Lisa, let me pause right there because I know I said a lot. Did you have any response to anything I said or anything of that nature? I'm sorry.
Well, I did want to ask a question, and I think maybe I know I heard you say it from a perspective of entering into a relationship and having a bad experience because we didn't have an understanding, nor did we do the work, and then we come out and then we recycle that same experience. And so I'm just wondering, is that gender specific? Are you saying as a whole? I'm not trying to be controversial.
No, no,
just
no,
I just
no. That's a great question because I
Mhm.
didn't address that and you did, and so I apologize for that. I don't believe it's gender specific. I
Okay.
believe wholeheartedly it's people specific.
Okay.
I think a lot of us, especially in the space of social media, a lot of us tend to focus on one group or the other, right? It's either all women do this or all men do that. And if you guys heard me say this before, any generalized statement that we make automatically makes it wrong, right?
Mhm.
However, comma, I believe a lot of times when we focus on one particular gender, generally it's not the gender that we're in. So
Okay.
if I focus on that gender, I am now disregarding what the Bible actually told me to do, and that's to focus on me,
Mhm.
right? It should not be my concern what all women is doing, as long as what I'm doing is what I'm called to do. And so I think that's the thing. And when we stop doing stuff like that, not and this isn't about what you said. You have every right to say what you said because you're a woman, right? Um, However, I will say that if I focus on what I can do to better myself, then I can posture myself to where I can be in the perfect situation to where I can help my gender and talking to my gender, sharing information with my gender, and connecting with those people who believe in such a degree that I believe. So I wouldn't say it's gender specific as it pertains to submit. I would say that it is people specific as it pertains to who we are. And I will kind of get into that moving forward. But great question. And thank you for saying that. Let me see if I haven't spoken to you yet. I do apologize. I think I did. N. Ellis, good to see you. Miss Verlene McCoy, always good to see you and welcome to the show.
Yes. Hello, Miss Berlin.
So Michelle Ray says, The lack of understanding of relationships with the Most High, not knowing Him, solidifies the why we don't know. I really do like that statement. People viewing it as a loss of anything is generally where the initial problem lies. It takes on a negative connotation right out the gate. Absolutely. Thank you, Crystal, for addressing that. I sound better. Also, the notion of I have to give up my identity. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Ben says to submit is to lower yourself under the guidance of another that you are connected to because you're going in the same direction and what they know is more beneficial to the team. Absolutely. Absolutely. Last but not least, Michelle says men can be submissive as well. It's not gender specific, it's people specific. Absolutely. Thank you for that. So that being said, let's kind of get into this so we can kind of break it down. So first, we're going to focus on defining the discipline of submission. I'm going to say again, defining the discipline of submission. So Lisa, the first question I'm going to drop in your lap, if you don't mind, ma'am. What does it truly mean to submit, and how can we differentiate between genuine submission and mere compliance?
Genuine submission is that we're wholeheartedly giving ourselves to the thing. So for me, when I was looking up submission, I always have to view it with the relationship that I have with God. I know that we have to submit in almost everything that we do. We had to put on our seatbelt because the law requires us to submit. We had to we had to stop at the red light because the law requires us to submit. We have to be on time to work because that's a requirement for us to maintain and to be in a workspace. So those are things that we have to submit to, whether we want to or not. Or I don't think we're submitting to those things, but we're submitting to the outcome of those things, which is our paycheck. Okay. So when I think about submission and I think about what a better person to submit to than God. So I have to give my whole self to that. I have to embrace it. I have to be sincere and I have to be genuine. Because why have a relationship if it's not going to be genuine? Why not listen to the very one who created you? He knows everything about you. So I think first that we submit to God, because when we submit to Him, stopping at the red light, putting on our seatbelt, being on time to work are things that are going to be easier for us to do. Now, if we're going to be doing it by compliance, you're just doing it because just it's a notion that I'm going to do this, but I'm not genuine about it. But I am going to do this just to go through the motions. So that's my thoughts.
You know what? I love it. I love it. I like the fact that you brought in the work situation because y'all know I like to go to the work, the job, and use those as examples. And then that kind of brings. Well, let me just answer the question first, and then I kind of go into all of that. I think when it comes down to just defining what submission is, I like what Michelle Ray said because she is saying something right along the same lines I'm going to start with. So submission, first and foremost, is me finding the way to humble myself. I think I heard from one of my mentors the best definition of humility I've ever heard in my life. It is the pursuit of me becoming nothing. I'm sorry, the pursuit of me becoming no one, going nowhere, expecting absolutely nothing. Now, when you really stop and process that bit of information, that really helps us to understand where we could be in error as it pertains to humility. So, again, it is the pursuit of me being no one, going nowhere, expecting absolutely nothing. And if we can do that, then we can appreciate everything and every encounter that we have. First and foremost, the Bible tells us clear that God is spirit, and to worship Him, we must worship Him in spirit and in truth. And then we go back and understand it also tells us that we were made in his image and after his likeness. Therefore, we can conclude that we are spirit as well. I think that's pretty much a common understanding for those of us who are believers. Well, if we are spirit first, right, that should help us to dispel a majority of the information that we grew up knowing, because the information that we grew up knowing identified us as being as human first. Okay, and so until we get to the point of digesting the notion that we are a spiritual being having a human experience, then we'll think that we are a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. So we got to flip flop the understanding, because once we flip flop the understanding, it changes the behavior, or it should lead us down the path to changing the behavior. So submission, in essence, is me trying to be more so like my creator, because that's what I was called to be, first and foremost. So there's a couple of layers of submission that must take place. Number one, I have to submit to the higher authority. That authority is the Most High, because He is my creator. He created me to be like Him. So my pursuit is to be like Him. That's starters. Now, if we decide, say that part again, if we decide, and the word decide means something in particular, right? So if we decide, if we cut off all other options to get married, then we have to understand how it is depicted. In that depiction, there are instructions, lines of responsibility to the husband and the woman, okay, or the wife. So the husband is charged to do some things. The wife is charged to do some things as well. And it's very specific. And it utterly confuses me when we misuse it and change it into something that suits our worldly perspective of a human trying to have a spiritual experience. So what we do is we cater to my humanity, because how I feel about it becomes more important than what I know about it. And so we will take what I know and submit it to how I feel. And that's backwards. We're supposed to take how we feel and submit it to what I know at all costs. Therefore, our experiences leading up to this thing should only serve as lessons learned for me to subject this thing to my spirit. So now submission for me is, in order for me to be more like him, I have to find a way to make the human subject to the spirit, because the world has shown me how to make the spirit subject to the human. And we kind of talked about that for the past 2 Fridays. So understanding that submission first takes place with me, then I go into the space of relationship. Now submission takes place with each other, and it looks different for both people. So when we get back to the notion of understanding what does it truly mean to submit, first I must submit to my creator. That's number one. If I have never submitted to my creator, then it's going to be virtually impossible to submit for me to submit for somebody who does the exact same things that I do on this earth. That's the starting point I always like to go. Because if we miss that cogent point, then everything that we try to do in the space of relationship is going to be it's going to be topsy-turvy. It's going to be stormy. It's going to be trials and tribulations constantly. It's okay for them to be every now and then, but it's going to be constant trials and tribulations. So I submit to the higher authority first by making my flesh submit to my spirit, and my spirit submit to the spirit. Okay. Then in the space of relationship, I understand what the scriptures say as it pertains to submission within the relationship. Now, I understand somebody just said, well, the Bible says submit one to another. You're right. Keep reading though. Don't stop there. Don't exegete. Don't stop there and say submit one to another. Continue to read so you can define exactly what he is saying when he says that. Because too many times people will just isolate that one scripture because they're using that one scripture to fit their fleshly narrative. And that is error. So we have to continue to read to have a clear understanding of what that actually means, so that we can get to the point of understanding what it truly means to submit. How can we differentiate between general submission and compliance? Easy. Just look at the person's behavior. Your attitude, right? Old sayings, right? Because again, I got mentors and I listen to them, and because they make a lot of sense, right? It's an old notion that says your attitude depicts your altitude. And so ideally, the way that we express, right, express what we know, because that's really what the human experience is supposed to be. The human experience is the expression. So, you know, heaven gives us meaning, earth gives us expression. I'm sorry, heaven gives earth meaning, earth give heaven expression. So, in essence, we express our understanding of who He is. Therefore, we become a vessel that He can channel His energy to and through, right? So now we're getting into something more specific. Now we're getting into the notion of just doing the thing to check the box, right? We can do it with an attitude. We can do it begrudgingly. We can do it just simply because, well, this is what my job description says, right? Or we can get to the point that we have buy in. And buy in means that I have now identified with the overall mission. And me identifying with the overall mission identifies that I actually executed submission from an individual perspective before I decided to get into the union. So I said a lot. Let me back off the microphone because it's smoking. I apologize. What are your thoughts on that, Lisa? Because I'm curious.
Well, I think in all of it, I heard that when we honor God first, when we submit to Him, um, I mean, truly submit. Like you were saying, don't do it because you want to be in compliance or because you think it's what the other person says. But when we submit to Him, we're saying to Him that I trust you, and um, in every aspect of my life, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to submit everything about me to you, and I think that's where we as individuals may have a difficult time because there's some things we don't want to let go of, and we won't submit them to God because we think He don't know. Well, He sees He knows all things. I mean, this is me speaking based on what I believe. Okay, He sees and He knows all things. So why not submit them to them? Why not bring them under subjection so that He can help you work through them? Because then, even though it might be uncomfortable, because trust me, I understand the process is uncomfortable. Once we identify that we need to make some changes, and it may be a little difficult, and it may feel very uncomfortable, but it's necessary. It's necessary. Like the image of you being on that pot and God molding you. Sometimes some of them lumps got to come out, and sometimes you got to start over and help you to reshape the way that you're thinking about things. Because why not submit to the one who created you, the creator? He knows all things because we didn't try it our way. I know you've heard him say that so many times in church, but when you think about it, we have tried it our way, and there's been no success really. And we're going through unnecessary things because we want to hold on to something that does not benefit us or benefit the people that we're in relationship with. I can't hear you.
Because I was muted. My bad. Y'all know me. I would derail a whole conversation for a question. Is there a measurement to how long it will take to fully understand submission and the application process?
No, there is not a measure. I mean, we can't measure it. Life has its ebbs and flows, um and we have to. I think it's going to be dependent upon us. It's dependent upon us. We are the one who are going to have to be fully committed to understanding God's will for us. So once we understand that, and we're growing all the time in understanding that. So once we understand that and we get into step with the Holy Spirit, He constantly helps us. See, the Holy Spirit is the one who teaches us. He guides us as we are submitted to the Father, and He brings things back to our remembrance, and He gets us back on track sometimes, and He will also correct us as well. So when we're fully submitted, then we have this help, our helper, to come in and help us to make sure that we're in line with God's will. And so I don't think there's any time frame where we can measure it. I think it's just a constant relationship, and it's going to continue to go until there's no relationship or until we're no longer here. And I don't want to sound morbid, but That's what I believe. There's no measurement. We can't say, if anyone comes and tells you, well, this process of submission is going to take you 6 months, they're lying. I mean, this is not true, because God only knows, and you and the one have the relationship with him. So no one can tell you that. No one can say, well, I've been through this and this is what I did and it took me that long. Well, that was for them. That's not a process for everyone. So I just wanted to say that.
Don't believe it. Don't believe the hype. I'm just saying, if somebody told you that, don't listen to them. They're lying. I'm with Lisa. You know what I'm saying? And because this is what I believe. To fully understand submission and the application process, I think you're done. I think at that point, that's when it's time to go home. This, in turn, which you just asked, in my mind, depicts the process of sanctification, what we call spiritual formation in the academic world, right? So I think this takes a lifetime. This is the progressive nature of your being when it comes down to fully understanding submission. Now, you have to understand what we mean when we say understand, because the word understand by itself is a term of submission. So, you hear some people on, certain areas talk about, being Mirandized, when you get read your rights. But anyway, I'm not going to go there. But we got to understand the word understand by itself is a term of submission. So to fully understand, to fully submit yourself all the way across the board, to include the application process, that's the process of sanctification. So at the end of the day, once you get there, it's time to go home to glory. So that's why I say, if anybody says, oh, no, it took me, no, there are certain things that you are good at, but does that mean that that's the end of it? Like, say, for example, and I'm just going to use this as an example to get off of it, because I think this is a great question. Let's just say, for an example, I view my responsibility, and I'm going to go to the social media world, right? Cooking and cleaning, right? Because that's what you're hearing a lot about, cooking and cleaning. So if I, cook and clean without being told to, I do so happily because I view that as a way of me serving my particular mate. Sure, that's a great thing. But what else can I be doing? I'm not talking about what additional task, right? What else can I be doing along that vein? Now, moving outside of those particular tasks, what else can I do, right, to show that I'm serving my mate? Do I really serve my mate? If my mate say, "Hey, we're going to turn left," and I want to go right, do I believe that arguing with my mate about why turning left is the wrong thing to do? So it's like it is a entire holistic process of your being when it comes down to understanding how long it would take to fully understand submission and the application process. I think we conceptualize a thing and we believe at the point of concept, we know it. That's error. That's wrong. Concept does not mean you know it. Concept just simply means it's a concept. You have to analyze the information and all of that great stuff, and balance that information based upon what you've experienced and see the variances in between what you're understanding or what you're learning about submission and what I know about submission. And then at some point, one of these two have to yield to the other. Is it my experience that makes the word yield, or is it the word that makes my experience yield? I know the answer for me. You have to decide the answer for you. If it is your experience that makes the world yield, then we ain't even in continual communication. Like, we'll speak every now and then, but we're gonna keep it moving because we're not in the same community. I'm sorry, that's just what reality is. However, if it's the word that makes my experience yield, that's something different. It's not saying that the experience never happened. It's not saying that the experience never affected me. It's saying that the experience is not a representation of my being, right? So again, remember, we are a spirit, right, having a human experience, not the other way around. Not a human having a spiritual experience. So we have to understand, right, how to put things in its proper order. When we put things in the proper order, then we can see things through the proper lens. When we see things through the proper lens, we can make split-second decisions. Why? Because the answer is already given through the lens and what I now understand. So that's kind of like my response to this question. I think this is a great question because I think this in turn yields something of a greater notion. It's not just as simple as it looks. It is something far greater that we are pursuing. So thank you for that question. Hold on, let me see. She said, "Is it safe to say when the statement I am a humble person?" Yeah, I ain't gonna address that. I'm sorry. I just answered that. I'm just gonna say it that way. I just answered that. Are you submitting if you are doing something to appease the other person, or do you do it because of the higher power wants you to?
As we are taught in the Diamond membership, the first relationship that we have, I'm saying that jokingly, but it's really impactful and it really helps you to understand relationship with others. That's what the word of God tells us. How can you say you love me whom you've never seen, but you can't love your brother and sister who you see daily? So the first relationship we have is with God. He is the relationship. That's the first one. And he's teaching us because he will withhold no good thing from us. He loves us so much. He loves his creation so much that he wants us to be in relationship with us, and he wants to help us as we go through our life. He wants us to understand that having the relationship with him benefits every other aspect of our life. That would be my answer.
I like it. I like it. Cut and dry response, then more detail on behind. The answer is B. The answer is that it's because of the higher power directs us to. That's what I would start off with. Why do I say that? Because the Bible tells us to do all things as unto him. So my my version of submission is because, like Lisa said, I respect my first relationship. When I respect my first relationship, it makes better sense. It's just like I talk about certain things as it pertains to marriage. I think the wedding ceremony, and in most cases, I don't necessarily, I've been to a few of them, and I'm like, nope, nope, nope. But that I do like, and that I do like is this. I like the notion of, like, if you know me, I'm totally against modern day weddings because it's all about glorifying one person over the other. But the depiction of the father, you got to listen to what I'm saying. The depiction of the father walking the bride down the aisle and giving her to her husband is a perfect representation of what Paul talks about in Ephesians chapter 5 when he says, "Wives, submit to your own husband." It's almost as if Christ himself is walking his daughter down the aisle and giving her to her husband and saying, "Take care of her for me. And afterwards, I'm going to move on the other side of you and make sure that you submit to me in doing so." And that's in essence what it is. The husband has a responsibility to Christ, and the family is the recipient of that. The wife, by virtue of her honoring her first relationship, recognized by deciding to get married, now what she does is to him. However, it is as unto God. So she now views him as that. So that's where the term submission is. I know a lot of people don't like hearing that. I got it. I didn't write the Bible. I just read it. Um, so we have to understand how that actually manifests itself in real time. Do we do things begrudgingly? No, because if Christ himself was standing here, I wouldn't be like, "Here, Lord, here go your cup of coffee." No, you know what I'm saying? It's not going to be that way. So a lot of times what we have to do is we have to search ourselves constantly, constantly. And as we're searching ourselves, was there any bit, I don't care how big, I don't care how small, was there any bit malice, frustration, anger, all those other things that are not of him that exist in me doing this thing? Did I do it because of something I want in response? Because if I did it because of something I want in response, then I didn't do it for him. I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. And so that's not ideally. That's why I like the fact when you brought up the notion of work, because in that essence, that gives a notion of submission. But the reason why we go to work is we want that paycheck. Let's call a spade a spade. You know what I'm saying? I'm working for this check. You cut off the check, you will hear people say it all the time. Hey, if the government shut down, I ain't coming back to work. They're telling you where their loyalties lie. And at some point, we need to recognize that exists in the space where we're hoping that buy-in comes into play. Now, I can talk on the other side as well, where leaders are supposed to help cast vision, and then casting vision and helping to depict the core values of the organization. You help the members of the organization have buy-in. Same thing with the husband's supposed to do. The husband is supposed to cast vision, right, and talk about the and this is it's so simple. We talk about the core values of the family. Well, where do we get the core values of the family from? The Bible. It's simple. He gave it to you already. So if those are our core values, if his vision is our vision, then the work is now easy. All we have to do is strive to get there. So I love this question because everybody is working as unto God first. And the people that we're in closer proximity with, they are the recipients of our submission to him. And I think that's kind of like what sums it up. So thank you for that question.
Coach, I had a question.
Sure.
Because you said, I ain't trying to be messy.
I'm drinking my tea before you ask your question.
You said you don't like modern day
Nope.
weddings. Nope, you're not gonna address that.
I mean, I go there, but I'm just saying I don't like them. Nope, I don't like them at all.
Okay, because they glorify one person over the other, right?
It glorifies one person over the other. You glorify the ceremony. There's a lot of glorification out there that's outside of what we should be doing, what the focus should be.
Okay. And that's it. We're gonna leave it right there.
We're gonna leave it right there. And that's a conversation for another day. We ain't gonna go there today. See? Somebody ain't trying to be messy.
Just wonder.
I got you. She had another question too. I love the fact she's asking questions. Is humanity and submission one and the same?
Submission is what we do as unto God. Humility is something that we have to do to find within ourselves so that we can extend that to based on the spirit that we have that dwells within us, so that we can have that for each other. That's my thought on it.
And I want to make sure that she, because I understand autocorrect. Did she mean humanity or humility?
Okay.
And again, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is humanity and submission one and the same? So I guess I'm not understanding the question because I thought
Right.
it was humility.
No, you're fine. And I think she may have meant humility. And that's why it's talked about autocorrect. But to her question for both sides, I think if the question is humility and submission one and the same, I would have to say the answer is yes. It is one and the same, because the more I humble myself, the more I can submit myself, because I am now no one, right? Going nowhere, expecting nothing. And the more I can move myself out of the equation, then the more I can recognize and, as Paul says, esteem others higher than myself. Well, if I'm seeing myself as no one going nowhere, expecting nothing, then it is easy for me to esteem others higher than myself. Why? Because I am no one going nowhere, expecting nothing. Now, does that mean that I am something negative? I'm a piece of trash. I'm, as some of you would hear some people say, I'm nothing but filthy rags. No, that does not mean that. You're none of that stuff. You're taking on a mindset of casting down my flesh for the sake of allowing my spirit to be more in my life than it has ever been before. And I understand that is a very difficult process, and every part of your being is going to fight against it. Why? Because everything in your subconscious is driving your behavior. So in order for you to get to the point of submission, you have to learn to restructure your subconscious. And so that's how I would respond to that. Now, if she was talking, if the question is humanity and submission one and the same? Absolutely not. Not even in the same conversation. But I really do think she meant humility. But thank you for that question, because again, another great question. Listen, man, we gotta get going. Can submission coexist with questioning and doubt? And how should we navigate these moments?
I'm going to say, if our identity is in Christ, no, it cannot coexist. I would say that, if that's where our identity is. And how we can navigate these moments, is Okay, can submission coexist with questioning and doubt, and how should we navigate these moments? So when the moments come up when there are doubts, that we may have doubts, that's where it leaves open the opportunity for us to have a conversation. And not that we're just going to have a conversation, or we're going to ask questions for understanding, because the end goal is to understand, right? I, I would think we were having, when there are some, some doubt, the first thing we should do, I think, I heard you use an example one time when there was a statement made, um, in within the relationship, and the husband said, "We're going to do this," and then the response was, "Why?" Not asking questions for understanding. And I think that that's how we navigate these moments, is when we are sincere and we really genuinely want to understand, and we want to make sure that we maintain harmony within our relationships.
I like it. Um, I really do like it, and I really like this question, because it really challenges who we are. It really challenges a lot of things that we knew, um, in this world as we were brought up, how we do business, what you're hearing right now across the spectrum of conversation. Um, when it comes down to asking questions, there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking questions. We kind of talked about this last week, last Friday night, right? If I don't have the ability to ask you questions, then now we're talking about a different measure of control. That is nothing but control. So if I'm asking you a question and you take me asking you a question offensively, that says more about you than it does about my curiosity about the question that I have. Now, there is a way to ask questions. I'm just keeping it real. And I think that's what you were talking about just now, Lisa. There is a way to ask questions. If, for whatever reason, I've decided that we're going this way, we're going to go down this road. We're going straight down. Every city got a Broad Street, right? So we're going straight down Broad Street because that's the direction we're taking. And why am I taking that way? Because I felt led that direction. Okay. Um, but then your question is, well, why are you going this way? You can go this way over here. That ain't gonna work for me. I'm sorry. Um,
Is
because
that
again, huh?
is that being confrontational?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, because the question does not come from a place of curiosity. The question comes from a place of questioning, right? And so a lot of times we are conditioned to believe that it doesn't matter how I ask a question as long as the question is asked. That's incorrect. That's not an accurate statement, right? Questioning is one thing, asking questions is something different. It's like going to the Bible and say, well, Lord, why I gotta pray? Well, okay, because he's God. That's why. And sometimes what we gotta address and accept is that it is what it is. Yeah, so there you go. Ben said the same thing, right? There's a difference between asking questions and questioning. Absolutely. Right. Um, we don't question the most high. If he give us instruction, those instructions, it is what it is. Why? Because I said so. You know what I'm saying? Now, that's from him. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the posture that a husband should take from a wife to a wife. That should never be the posture. Just like, why are we going down that way? That should never be the posture either. You know what I'm saying? Now, another way of asking that question is say, hey, I was looking and it seemed like this way would be faster. Is it possible? And I understand you chose to go this route. Is it possible to even go this other way? Somebody just said, oh, that's too many words. Well, I'm sorry. You need to stay single. If you don't have the ability to humble yourself and put together words constructively to ask a more well defined question, then you need to practice being alone. I'm just being transparent. It's just like working for an organization. The only people who question the CEO are the C suites. The I'm sorry, the functional managers, they don't necessarily question. They said, okay, that's what the boss wants. That's what we're gonna do. The people who are the wage employees, right? Because we're not talking salary now. The wage working employees, they don't even get a chance to question the C-suite. They just do because that's the direction the company goes in. But if the management have done their job properly, notice I'm articulating two lines of responsibility. If management have done their job properly, again, cast visions, clearly define the core values, and helping them to find where they fit in the organizational structure. Well, the same thing as in the family. So if the husband has done his job properly, cast vision, define values, helping you understand how you are a larger part of the overall plan, then it's simple. It is very simple. So there will be no questioning, there will only be questions. And we should never be offended by questions. Doubt is another animal that you got to work out yourself. I'm sorry, just keeping it real. If you got doubt, that ain't my responsibility. And you know what? I know it sounds harsh, but I'm being completely transparent. If you're if I'm not gonna talk with nobody else. If I'm married and my wife got doubt in my abilities on what I talked about that I feel that I'm called to do, then we should have never gotten married, because only thing you're expressing now is the same doubt you had in the beginning. And the reason why you have doubt is because you're trying to see what's in it for me. That's just what I believe. And ideally, the other side to it, it could be because the husband did not cast vision, did not articulate values, did not give her buy-in. So it's always two modes of responsibility as we get into it. How do we navigate? Cast vision, talk about values, make sure that the other person understand how they fit into the grand scheme of the plan. It's that simple. And I think the simplicity of it confuses us. It is clearly defined. Like Ben just said, write the vision, make it plain. When we understand, like if you automatically know, listen, this is how I pattern my life, then I've already given you my boundaries. Now, if you need me to reestablish those, I don't have a problem with doing it. None whatsoever. No hesitation either. I don't mind reconfirming, right, my boundaries with you because you didn't get it when we were talking about it in the scope of the book. So now I got to make it plain, like Ben said, write the vision, make it plain. Now I got to make it plain to you. Now, if this is still, if this is still what you want to do, then that means my boundaries will still be there. So you respect my boundaries, I respect your boundaries. Again, boundaries are not necessarily things to keep people off. It protects people as it pertains to the scope of relationship. Why so? And I might be getting ahead of myself, Lisa. Why so? Because at the end of the day, I see it. At the end of the day, what it really does is it helps me to govern myself. This is why I coined the phrase, my boundaries, my yard, my work. My boundaries establish my priorities of work for myself. And if there are priorities of work for myself, the the benefit of that work means that those boundaries that I have for myself are automatically applied to you. So if I can't do that, if you can't do that to me, then you trust and believe I won't do it to you. And that's how it should work. So there it is. That's my thoughts. Lisa Keys, you got the jotting down some information over there. You had something you want to add to it? I know it can be controversial. I don't mean no harm.
No, I was just going to say that in that, in that scenario, in that situation, um, the helper who God deemed to be the wife, as well, the helpmate, not the helper. I think that one of the things that are helpful is that if you understand the order, if you understand order in relationship, that you were like, okay, if this is the decision he made, I'm gonna pray for its success. But if it's not the right decision, that's gonna be between him and God. And that I think is helpful to understand if you guys have a relationship where you both believe. That's gonna be between, if this don't work out the way it's supposed to work out, that got nothing to do with me, God. You heard me. I was praying, I was supportive. But if it's not from you and it's from him, then that's gonna be between him and God.
Absolutely. Let me see something. I think I've seen another question. How do I ask the question in the space that elevates challenging? Not necessarily understanding what you mean. I think
She mean alleviate. Is she saying alleviates challenge?
okay. That might be it. I'm sorry. Um, so Lisa, if you want to tackle that one first, by all means. I mean, I have an answer if you want me to
No,
go.
you go ahead.
Um, again, recognize that I'm a spirit having a human experience, right? I am no one I am no one going nowhere expecting nothing. So if the source of my questioning is about me, then I shouldn't ask the question. Let me say it again. If the source of my questioning is about me, then I shouldn't ask a question. That is a question for me. Let me say that again. That is a question for me, not a question for you. If, no, you're fine. If the question is all about me, I don't even ask the question because I recognize that the source of this question is coming from my flesh, it's coming from my feelings. That's number one. Number two, if the question that I'm asking, whether or not the question is for the betterment of the team. If the question is for the betterment of the team, that is a question that warrants asking. So again, we got to understand where the source of the question is coming from, and given a response, who does it benefit? Does it benefit me? Does it benefit? Why does it sound like an old song? Does it benefit me? Or does it benefit you? Does it benefit us? Right. So that's what I'm sorry. It just kind of rang in my head. So if the answer benefits me, then there's no need for me to ask the question because it is all about me. If the answer benefits you, then I can't ask you the question because the answer and the question will help elevate you. That's why I was kind of, stuck in between elevate and alleviate. However, if the question benefits the team, then that's a question that I need to ask. I need to ask that question. So that's where I will start with that. And I think she had a follow on question too. Can a person have issues with being asked anything and wants the other person to be okay with the simplest answer?
Can they? Yeah. They can. I would say yeah.
Oh, I love that.
I would say also that, if you can't have a conversation to come to understanding, then I think it's pointless. If someone wants to Lord that I have authority and our man hear me roar, then that's another problem. I think there's something that, again, that they have to work out within themselves. So that would be my response.
I'm torn.
You torn?
I'm torn. Um, Here's why I'm torn because I am that person. been, been, been crazy. I am that person that literally believes, and I said it just now, that no one should ever have a problem with being asked questions. However, I am also that person that believes that I am not going to subject myself to your emotions to answer the question that you want to ask to appease you, especially if I can recognize it. If I recognize that the question is coming from a source that is benefiting the individual, not, you know what I'm saying? The question wasn't for me, the question wasn't for the team, the question was for the individual. Then I will be honest with you. I am slow to give a lot of details behind it because I'm waiting on the secondary and tertiary question. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just, I don't know. Why is Ben so, why are you and Ben so close? Because I've known him for years. That's my dude. That's it. I'm not going to give a whole bunch of details about, yeah, we was in the army, we were bros, we got in trouble together, like we did. I'm not doing all that. You see what I'm saying? So I think some things we got to recognize that whatever you give, like it's an old saying, wherever my attention goes, my energy flows. I refuse to put attention into the abyss of something that will not yield any profit. I'm sorry. And if I can recognize that you are trying to take me down with this plane where both engines have already died, I ain't going. I'm jumping. I'm pulling the chute. I'm out. I'm just being honest. So I won't go down that rabbit hole. And I'm okay with that. However, I will ask the question, where did that come from? Why are we focused on this as opposed to focusing on the thing that we need to be focused on? Because now that's me trying to say, hey, remember, you're a spirit having a human experience, not a human trying to have a spiritual experience. And too many times we have been conditioned, and I'm just going to call it the institution. We have been conditioned by the institution, right, to be a human seeking to have a human, I mean, to be a human seeking to have a spiritual experience. And for whatever reason, the only place you would have that spiritual experience is at Sunday mornings around 12:15, right before offering. I'm just keeping it real. So that's that's my point. So we got to get to the point of moving the flesh below the spirit. If the flesh have rised up, then close up. I'm gonna say it again. If the flesh rise up, then close up. Because when this opens and you speak from the perspective of your flesh, problem will ensue. Because here's what you cannot do in the old and the older generation. They're the ones, and this is where I get it from. Because my grandmother used to say it all the time. You can't throw the rock and hide the hand. Once you throw the rock, you're now subject to the response of the other person. And the Bible is clear. If thy brother trespass against you, rebuke him. And rebuke is not a, oh, well, why did you ask that? No, it ain't fixing to go that way. Like, you need to address it straightforward, because if you don't address it straightforward, you have now created a new norm. And once the new norm has been created, it will persist. And I think that becomes another problem within itself. So, can asking a person have issues with being asked anything and wants the other person to be okay with the simplest answer? I think there are times when there is a simple answer. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I was in the Army, I wasn't trying to give a whole lot of details when I had other pressing things going on. When I had a lot of other things going on and my soldiers came and asked me a question, go do what I tell you to do. We'll talk about it later. That's just it. So I think in the realm of certain things, we have to look at it situationally and understand what takes priority. Does the authority take priority on my need to know? If the answer is yes, and for me it is, then the authority will always be the one that wins in this internal battle that I'm having with ourselves. A lot of times we exist in the space of internal conflict. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I know what I feel like doing. And I don't care who you are, everybody experiences this, right? This is part of this is the challenge with the human experience. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but this is what I feel like doing. And right now, they're just not in a good relationship. I'm sorry, that's your hill to climb. And here's the deal: I may like you a whole lot, I just can't do it for you. So I hope I answered your question. With the knife hand. I hope I answered your question. Again, great questions, man. You guys are on it. Um, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, we keep pressing, Lisa. Um, Next, we're going into submission and conflict resolution. I'm laughing here because I really only got one question here. You ready for it, Lisa? What role does communication play in the effective practice of yielding, and how can couples develop this skill? You're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. Um, I said I had to take my time with this one because um, what role does communication play in the effective practice of yielding, and how can couples develop this skill? So I think this is where we make sure that we find that we are trusting, finding each other trustworthy. Okay. Um, and we have something to base it off of. We have something to base it. We have a track record per se to base it off of. And then we can use that as our prior, experiences that we've had with each other to understand that this person is safe. This person is doing their best to make sure that this relationship is healthy and that they're leading us in the right path, in the right place. And that's us trusting and putting our finding a person trustworthy, I'm sorry, and trusting the God in that individual. And so I think that when we communicate, if we're communicating from the standpoint where we're yielding because we trust to God that that our mate or person or friend, whoever the person is, we trust the behavior that we've observed and that we witness, and we can continue to develop from that, because we're always learning about each other. We're always growing. We're always learning about each other. And in the process of growing together, we can identify um, those that this is a safe place, and we can continue to build upon that and continue to develop it. And those are, when we do that, when we go through those processes, when we identify, I want to use an example. Abraham, this I want to use him. So when Abraham, when he began, before he Abram, before he became Abraham, he was just entering into a relationship with God. Well, the relationship grew, and God changed his name, and he continued to learn. It was a process of understanding in the course of their relationship, and he continued to learn. He continued to trust God. He continued to show himself faithful in the relationship with God, because God said, "Prove me and see when I open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing you have not room to receive." And so that's what God constantly does when we're in relationship with Him. And so I think that that is the same process. I'm talking about people who are, kingdom believers, um, and because that's who I am. So that's why I'm speaking to that particular um, population. But it does not mean that this that other people seeing this as an example and using it for their life, that they can apply this as well. But that first step is to have a relationship with God, and to allow Him to abide in you, and to allow Him to lead you and guide you. Because when you do that, then you can make better decisions. There's not as much confusion in the relationship, and it helps you to be more, find the person trustworthy, and you can yield to the decisions that they're making, because you know that they're going to make it for just the betterment of the whole and not just themselves. But that's you forgetting all this foolishness about I can do everything by myself. I don't need anybody. Well, that's not true ever. It's never true. And so that's some of my thoughts when it comes to practicing, because practicing, I think you have to have a sense uh, of grace there. Because if you see a person is practicing, that means they're actively working toward doing something. They're trying to do it. So I think there's some grace is available there when someone is practicing yielding.
I like it. I like it a lot. Lisa, I appreciate your example. I got an example too. I hear your example, and I'm gonna raise you another example. Um, so, what role does communication play in the effective practice of yielding? Um, it is the manifestation of it. If we don't necessarily get it, only thing you got to do is listen to how, not necessarily what. What is important as well, but how is also important. Now, I would say it like this right here. Going back to what I said previously, our job, first and foremost, has to be where we humble our flesh and make our flesh submit to the spirit. Well, there's these things that we have going on in our head called self-talk. And so the issue with self-talk is that you will talk yourself into grandeur, thinking that your flesh is the most important thing about you because that's the only thing that you know. And what we end up doing is that we will bypass what we say we know as far as the scripture, but we'll speak from a perspective of, yep, I got all that down to the science. I'm good. Right. So it plays every role because it reveals reality until our behavior shows up. Once our behavior shows up, the behavior is a more authentic revelation of reality. So, in the space of self talk leads to external communication with other people. So, the story that you continue to tell yourself over and 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 over again will get to the point to where it will manifest itself in the conversation that you have with other people. So, you will speak from a place of being on this side of the fence or being on this side of the fence. So, I'm going to speak very aggressively, very abrasively, blah, 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 because I believe I'm the captain of the ship. I'm the man of my house. I'm, I'm saying all that other great stuff. and you ain't gonna talk to me any kind of way. I don't know who you think you is. Right? So stuff like that exists. I'm sorry, it is what it is. But then when you start to learn better, you may go all the way to the other side of the fence. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. How you know what? I don't understand. Okay, stop. Reset. Okay. So when you look at the role of effective communication practices, it is all about listening to what the other person says, respond directly to what they said to ensure that they can so that they can confirm that you understood what they said. Let me say that part again. Respond directly to what they said. Case in point, if I was to say, "Hey, I don't know, that's a nice clock you got on the wall back there," you know what I'm saying? Then she can say in two ways. She can respond directly to what I said by saying, "Thank you, I appreciate that." That's a direct response. Or she can say something totally different. Yeah, I went to Hobby Lobby and went down to Hobby Lobby. I went to get a coffee. I went to get a coffee cup and I didn't see the coffee cup I wanted. And unfortunately, what ended up happening is that I ended up walking down this aisle and I ran into this real nice old lady. And me and the old lady was sitting there talking and she was telling me about her family and all kind of, and I'm trying to hear all that. I'm not trying to hear, and I'm only using that as an example because that's what happens in the space of communication. That is very ineffective. You lost me when I went to Hobby Lobby. I ain't asked you that. I don't care where you got the clock from. I just told you that the clock was nice. Respond to what I just said. And sometimes we go all the way over here just to come all the way back around. And then we stop at the corner store and then we pick up something. And then finally we'll get to answer. I was going to get there if you would let me. No, I don't want to let you. I want you to get there.
Okay, I got a question. Okay. I got a question. So you mentioned the clock was nice, right?
I did.
Okay. Okay. And maybe she's proud of it because she found it.
That's for her.
So there's no time when you're going to listen to something that may bring a person joy, or I'm saying, I guess maybe in what instance, in what environment are we in? And we just
what's that word before practice?
Effective.
There it is.
Okay.
I don't really care where you bought the clock from. I didn't ask you where you bought the clock from. Okay. Only thing I said is it's a nice clock. That's it. You want to give me the backstory, the history, and I don't care about that. But okay. I'm using I'm using this as an example because this is the role that communication plays in the effective practice of yielding. Okay. The only reason you're telling me this backstory is because you're trying to tell me about you. I didn't ask you that.
You didn't ask about the clock.
I just said it's a nice clock. Okay. And so again, I am nobody going nowhere expecting nothing. And when we don't have that mindset, somebody was on sale. Nick D, go sit in the corner. But if I'm nobody and going nowhere expecting nothing, I have to remove me out the way and respond exactly to what you said. Too many times we have communication that glorifies self. Let me say it again. Too many times we have communications that glorify self. Me, 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 me. It's a song that we sing in our head. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. I get tired of hearing about you. Can we talk about something more important, please? I'm just saying. So the role that effective communication has, I'm sorry, the role that communication play in the effective practice of yielding, it is the reality of a person who has recognized that they need to or not. And through the art of conversation, they're telling you a story. Run or stay. Your choice, but you knew what you was getting into if you elect to stay. Nice clock. Oh, well, yeah. No, I ain't got time for that. I got to go. I'll holler at you later. But how can couples develop this skill? By reducing themselves in every conversation.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. So what does that mean? That means nice clock. Thank you so much. That was it. Real simple. So now you given me space to ask questions about the clock. Where did you get it from? I didn't ask. I don't care about the old lady you talked to. Oh, I got it from Hobby Lobby. It was on sale, Nick D. You see what I'm saying? Oh, okay, awesome. I'm gonna go to Hobby Lobby and see if I can find that same clock because it would look nice on my wall. So now it's an exchange. It's an orchestra that is actually happening that includes two people, not your ability to make it about you.
Okay,
And
Coach. I want to ask a question. So, and
yeah,
that's a good point. That's a good point. So, in this particular scenario, the person is making it all about them, and they're not leaving room for conversation to happen,
absolutely.
to be effective. So they're gonna like, I'm gonna get this all out because it's about me and I want you to hear me, versus I want to engage in conversation where it can be healthy and we can have dialogue.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that becomes one of the biggest problems because, oh my God, you're showing interest in something about me, my clock. This is the opportunity for me to spew all on you. No, 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 no. That's not what this is. It's just me showing interest in what, and maybe that could be small talk that leads to greater conversation. And that's the thing that happens when we get in. Okay, I'm going to bring this and I'm going to get off of it. That's the thing that happens when we complained enough and get in the room. We get in the room, and once we get in the room, oh, let me tell you how great I am. No, no. When you get in the room, make sure that you add value to the room. Don't expect the room to value you first. Humble yourself, appreciate being in the room. I am nobody, going nowhere, expecting nothing. And everybody in here is esteemed higher than myself. In any place I can fill a need, then I feel a need. Why? Because I see a need. And the next question, and this is why I like this. What's that TV show? Um, it's a hospital show. The lead director, he ended up having cancer.
New Amsterdam.
New Amsterdam. That's it. Because his token, and he got it to spread all the way across his staff, is how can I help? And I think that is one of the best postures that we can have is how can I help? Too many times it's like we only want to help people that we know that can help us. Wrong. It's still all about me. So again, I want to say that if we can adopt that posture in communication, we'll
Okay,
change
so
everything.
is that likened to desiring the best place at the banquet? You know, there's an example, a biblical example that Jesus is giving and teaching. It's liking the best place in the banquet and going to sit at the best table instead of allowing the other person to invite you to sit there. You are thinking more highly of yourself than you should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You know, I've been in the church for 30 some odd years. You know what I'm saying? I'm the deacon on the usher board, and I'm the president of the. Nobody asked you all that. I don't care what you think you are. And here's the thing. Listen, let me tell you something. I'm be honest with you. And I'm going off a little off top. I love y'all, right? I refuse to call another person pastor outside. I'm not gonna do it. I don't go to your church. Don't ever come to me telling me, "Oh, I'm Pastor Johnson. What's your first name? Hey, Doug, how you doing? You ain't my pastor." So again, we we have this super ego that exists that prevents authentic connection. And if we can find a way to get past the super, then we can handle our ego. And that's still within itself. Ego itself is just a feat for us to deal with as well. So that's just it. I want to kind of, drop that in there. Listen, I greatly appreciate you guys. Make sure that you hit the like button and make sure that you guys continue to add value because, again, we greatly appreciate it. At least I think we got time for one more. And I don't want to give all of that and don't kind of give something that we can walk away smiling and feeling pretty good about, right? Stop it. So that being said, I want to choose, you know what? Let's do that one. Can individuals maintain their own identity while practicing yielding in a relationship?
No.
You,
I'm sorry.
you, you don't need straightforward answers, man. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
I think I mentioned it earlier, but if our identity is found in God, how can we have our own identity by practicing yielding? Because we don't even have the ability to yield by in and of ourselves. We don't. But it's because that we have our helper that is helping us to yield. Because if it was us doing it by ourselves, I think there was a scripture, and I think it's in Corinthians, that Paul said, if I'm doing it by myself, I don't have the ability to do it, but Christ Jesus. That's the only reason why we have the ability to do anything that we do. We can't practice yielding in a relationship unless we have some help. Because the flesh is going to say, nope, I am not trying to do it. I don't want no parts of it. This is about me and nobody else. So if that's going to be our mindset, we need help. We need help to yield. We need help to continue to practice. We need to have understanding in the relationship. And we know that our first relationship is with the Most High. That's our first relationship. Our responsibility is to continue to keep on striving to get this right, to make sure we have an understanding and we're practicing it and within our relationship.
I like it. Can I have some fun? I don't know why
Yes.
this just came to my head.
Come
I'm
on.
gonna say a lyric, and I want y'all to tell me who it is. Put it in the chat. I gotta get ready. I need everybody in the ready position on their keyboard. Ready? All right, here you go. I'm rough and tough and all that stuff. I make you dance and prance till you huff and puff. There's just one way. There's just no way you can get enough of me. You're Miss Stuff. Big Stuff. There it is. I want y'all to tell me who that artist is real quick. Because the reason why that came to mind is that song started off, that's the lyrics, the chorus in that song is, who do you think you are? Lisa Keys says she's clueless. Lisa, yeah, just so y'all know, Lisa probably was in church her whole life. Just, you know.
I know the hook though. I know the hook.
Right. So the hook came from an old song.
Okay.
But the lyrics came from
okay.
yeah. But anyway, I ain't seen nobody typing yet. Y'all can't tell me y'all don't know who that is. All y'all who are around my age. So the reason why that came to my mind, there you go, Heavy D. The reason why that came to my mind is because the hook says, who do you think you are? Right? You don't know. You don't know who you are. You only know who you are today. And the problem with that is that next year, you're a different person. 10 years from now, you're a different person. I got a better one for you. 10 years ago, you weren't the same person. You may have some similar features. You may have some similar mannerisms, but you're not the same. In fact, ideally, the more we grow in knowledge of who he is, right, then it changes us. It should change us if we're doing it the right way. So that's the thing I'm going to say. So I like your response, how straightforward it was. No, because you're right. You're right. You cannot maintain your identity as you know it while practicing yielding in relationships, because your identity as you know it is what I'm sorry, let me say it like this. Your identity is the foundation of what we consider to be progressive awareness. There are some things that you don't even know yet about you. I'm gonna say it again. There are some things that you don't know about you. So I find it humorous internally, because I don't ever laugh out loud at people, at least not in front of them. I don't ever laugh out loud at people when they say, "I know who I am." No, you don't. You have an awareness of who you are, but you're still learning who you are. And I think the issue with that, when we believe that we know who we are, I think the issue with that, the other side of that, is that there's no room for me to learn who I'm becoming. So that's the thing that I would say. In the progressive awareness of who I am and am becoming, that makes room for this person that you meet next week, next month, next year. It makes room for me to be a better person. It makes room for me to be a better version of my understanding of the Most High. It makes room for me to treat people better. It makes room for me to value everyone I encounter. That person that I drove past that needed help last year, or that person that I didn't acknowledge who needed help last year, because from my perspective, I didn't believe that they could reciprocate. Well, next year, I may stop. Reciprocation or not, how can I help? So that's how I would say you know, we can't maintain our own identity because your identity was actually given to you in most cases. And so you don't necessarily know who you are. You're learning, you're become progressively aware of who you are today and who you are destined to be. And this person over here is the authority. Let me say it again. This person over here is the authority of this person right here. So, in order for me to get there and meet him, this is still me, by the way. In order for me to get there and meet him, it requires for me to visit, understand what he needs for me to know right now, and automatically start putting into practice right now. Because if I don't, then he moves further away. And then the time that it takes for me to intersect him, it becomes more prolonged. And I would explain exactly what all that means just now, but we're running out of time. Listen, we greatly appreciate you. We value you guys. We listen. I love the questions. I love your perspective. Thank you guys for adding to this discussion. Lisa Keys, I just want you to kind of like I ain't gonna do nothing fancy and go to single screen and all that. I ain't got the energy for it. Listen, I just want you to kind of give us your last thoughts as it pertains to the art of submission. Because I think this was a good conversation. We didn't get to everything, but that's okay. I didn't expect to get to everything, but I think we talked about a lot of great things. So, from your perspective, what would be the last thing that you want to leave everybody with as it pertains to submission?
I would say I know that it's not the easiest thing to do because we may not necessarily understand the importance of submission and how it is beneficial for our life and for all the people who are impacted by our life or who are in our circle. But the most safest place you can be is when you're submitted to God and you have a heart to understand Him. You want to grow to know His will for your life, and you want to have a life or lead a life that's pleasing to Him. Not we're all working, we're all striving towards something. So it's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay. As long as you continue striving toward having a a a life that is pleasing to God. Submitting to God is the most beautiful thing that we can do as believers. Once we understand that He has left His presence for us to walk with us, to guide us, to teach us, to counsel us, to bring all things back to our remembrance, it just, for me, I can say that it's something that's so beneficial and satisfying to do. So, what I would leave with you is to make sure that you understand, continue to read, and continue to pray, and continue to understand the importance of submitting to the God who loves us and who has nothing but good things in store for us. And He understands um, that He is there with us at all times. And He will never leave us and He will never forsake us.
Great. I love that. And I greatly appreciate that. Um, they tell you, man, when you give a preacher a microphone, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to keep mine as short as I possibly can to value your time on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. Any version of control, I want to start there. Any version of control or wielding of power is false. In the span of relationship, husband and wife, the husband don't need to make the wife submit. The wife submits because of her, you know, relationship with the Most High. It's not something that he makes her do. It's something that she does on her own. Okay. I think too many times we have been bombarded with a whole bunch of useless and false information. And that leads us down the space of projecting that information in space and trying to rule, or I would say it like this, and try to lord over somebody else. We have to understand that there's only one source of power. I'm going to say it again. There's only one source of power, and it's our responsibility to yield to that source. If it did not come from the source, then it's an illusion. So the illusion of power is always false. And it is your responsibility to be able to discern the illusion of power in time and space. And so that's my challenge to each and every one of you. I pray that your discernments are sharpened as you go forward through this day, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your weekend. And again, I want each and every one of you, again, hit the like button, share this with somebody who you think will benefit. Just warn them, Dwayne might be a little controversial, but he love you guys. He don't mean no harm. And listen, let the best version of yourself, which is progressive, by the way, let the best version of yourself be a blessing to someone else.